I walked into my junior year believing I was finally standing at the edge of everything I had ever dreamed of. The dream had a name, the NF land it felt close enough to touch. 10 games stood between me and the life I had sacrificed everything for. 10 games, that was it. Football wasn't just something I played, it was the center of my life. It shaped my mornings, my nights, my discipline, my pain tolerance, my purpose. While most people were asleep, I was awake for 5 o'clock in the morning, running 2 miles to a fire station, 2 miles back home, pushing my body before the sun ever rose. And when the day ended and the lights went out, I was still in the park at 9:30 at night, training while everyone else rested. Even at home, football followed me. I'd lie in my room throwing the ball up toward the ceiling, catching it in different ways, imagining scenarios, diving interceptions, contested catches, game-saving plays, studying angles, reactions, instincts. Everything in my life revolved around the game. Every decision I made was connected to that dream, and now it was real. I had the paperwork in my hands. Official documents. My name printed beside words I had dreamed of since I was a kid. NFL draft pick. Projected top 30. Automatic multi-millionaire. The hard part was supposed to be over. All I had to do was play 10 more games. That was it. I had made it. Then came a meaningless game against Air Force, 2 minutes left. I went to make a tackle I had made 1,000 times before. I could do with my eyes closed. The moment I hit him, I knew something wasn't right. But I didn't panic. I told myself what every football player tells himself, it's probably nothing serious. Injuries happen. You shake it off. You keep going. But then every breath left my body. My body went completely limp. I collapsed to the ground. I blacked out. When my eyes opened, teammates were standing over me, shouting, "Ink. Let's go. Get up. Finish them." I wanted to move. I tried to move, but nothing responded. "I can't," I said. They laughed at first. "What do you mean you can't? You're our starting corner. Get up. You can deal with it after the game." But I wasn't joking. I can't move. From my neck to my toes, I felt nothing. It was like my body had shut down. The shock faded, but the numbness stayed, especially in my right arm and my hand. I tried to convince myself it was just a bad stinger. That's what football players do, minimize pain so we can survive it. They strapped me to a spine board, wheeled me off the field. As the doctor walked beside me, he said words I will never forget. "Son, I don't know how you're still alive. You don't have a pulse." In the ambulance, I saw my father standing there. Even then, I tried to be tough. "Pops," I laid it on him, right? He nodded, then said quietly, "Yeah. But I think you got the worst part of this one at the hospital. Doctors told me they were going to run some tests, that everything would be fine." My mom came and kissed me. "Son, y'all be okay." Then she walked out. Seconds later, doctors rushed back in. One leaned over me and said, "We have to take him back to surgery right now. He's about to die." And I remember thinking, Jevin, in that moment, man, couldn't you use another word? A synonym? Why you gotta say die? In that instant, everything I thought my life was about, football, the NFL, the money, the fame, fell silent. The dream I had chased since childhood disappeared in a single play. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. My dream had an expiration date, but my purpose did not. That moment didn't end my life. It ended the life I thought I was supposed to live. And it forced me to discover the life I was actually created for. I could tell from the way I was looking at him that I was questioning him. And he looked back at me and said, "You've ruptured a subclavian artery in your chest. You're bleeding internally. If we don't perform this surgery tonight, I guarantee you won't be here in the morning." From 7 years old to 20 years old, everything I had bowed down to, everything I had sacrificed for, everything I had disciplined myself around, came down to one moment. The sacrifice, the dedication, the commitment, the pain, the grind. One moment. And when I woke up the next morning from that surgery, the NF lawn, the scale of my life was this big. The SEC championship, this big. Being a cornerback, this big. And I was embarrassed. Sitting there in that hospital room. People walking in, shaking their heads, saying in key, "Man, sorry about what happened to you," and talking to myself. "Man, you really messed it up this time, like you really blew it, like, man, that's really the only thing you wanted. Huh? You really thought that because you grew up in that so-called hood 2-bedroom house, 14 people under one roof, that the NFL was it. That was the peak. That was the ceiling. And it hit me hard. I had limited God. I had reduced my entire existence to one outcome. Like life held no value without football. Efficient but not effective. I did things right. But I never did the right thing. And now the very thing I placed my identity in was gone. That's why I laugh when people say, "Man, if I could just get this ID, be happy. Man, if I could just get this position ID, be good. Man, if I could just get this amount of money ID, be set." Like, but what happens if you get it? Or worse, what happens if you don't get it? What happens when God says yes? And what happens when God says no? Do you have the ability to accept what you don't understand? Can you still see God's plan when it doesn't go the way you thought it would? Can you handle life when things get off course? Sitting there thinking, man, 8 games away, and God is redirecting me. And telling God, just let me get to the NFL first. Then redirect me. Let me get the contract first. Then redirect me. So I can help my family. And God's like, "No, son, I need you to go that way." And like, "You sure? God, I really think I need to go this way." And he's like, "No, I need you to go that way. I've got something better. It might take a little longer to manifest, but I've got something sweeter. I've got something more fulfilling. I've got something more rewarding. I've got something, son, that's going to carry you for the rest of your life." And one day I knew without a doubt, this was exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Backstage about to speak, and I feel it again, that same rush, that same fire. The same feeling I used to get standing in the tunnel, right before running out into Neyland Stadium. And I said, "Thank you, God." And now I live my life a certain type of way. Not based on what I lost, but based on what God did. I live my life according to the power I know the Lord possesses. When I go to God in prayer, I go bold. And every time I go bold, I'm thankful. Because that's not me and my Lord's first time communicating, standing in rooms, meeting people, sharing life. And people have the nerve to ask me all the time in key, "Why wouldn't you change what happened to you? You've got a paralyzed right arm and hand. Why wouldn't you want it different?" And I just smile, because if you only knew, if you only saw the work that God has done in people's lives around me, what he's done through me, what he's done in spite of me. Yeah, what he's done for me is great. It's cool. But what he's done in the lives of people connected to this story, man, you can't put a price on that. At a certain point, you've got to stop and ask yourself, what is this really about? And I get it. I know the initial reaction when we go through stuff like this is, man, why does this have to happen to me? That's an honest reaction. Because sometimes good people go through some crazy stuff. And I'm gonna be real with you, some of the things we go through, there isn't a scripture for it. You can't always say go to Romans 2:2, and somebody looks at you like, what? Where is that? There's not always a verse you can point to. But this is what I've learned about life. Some people don't need you to preach a sermon. They need you to live one. And when they see you living it, they can connect. They can identify. They can say, okay, if God can carry him through that, maybe God can carry me through this. And that's the only thing I ask of you. As talented as you are, as brilliant as you are, as powerful as you are, as beautiful as you are, never allow life to make you forget why you started in the first place. Meaning that first time you said, man, I'm riding with Christ. Let's go. That first feeling, that first fire, that first connection, that first encounter when it became real to you. Because people say it all the time, at the beginning everybody's excited. At the beginning everybody's on fire. Yeah, but at a certain point in the journey, you're going to hit something, and it's going to test that commitment. At a certain point. you're going to hit something that tests that faith. And my definition of commitment has always been this: staying true to what I said I would do long after the mood I said it in has left. So I had to ask myself, am I going to stay true to my beliefs? To my core? To my essence? Even if I've got a paralyzed right arm and hand? Am I going to stay true, even if the career I thought I was going to have disappears? Am I going to stay true, even if one day I'm playing the game I love? The thing I practiced my whole life, the thing I sacrificed everything for, and in one moment it gets wiped out. Am I still going to stay true? Because at the end of the day, if your faith only works when life works, that's not faith. If your commitment only stands when things go your way, that's not commitment. And that's when I realized God wasn't trying to take something from me. He was trying to reveal something in me. He wasn't removing my purpose. He was refining it. And that's why I can stand here today, with peace, with confidence, with gratitude. Not because life went the way I planned, but because God stayed faithful when it didn't. And that's the sermon, not the one I preached, but the one I lived, because whether or not I stay true to it isn't just about me. A lot of other people's belief, a lot of other people's Christian journey, is predicated upon what they see in my belief, in my work, in my obedience, and I've seen it with my own eyes. I've had people come up to me and say, "Inky, I want to give my life to Christ not because of something that happened to me, but because of something they've seen happen through me." They say, "Man, if God can sustain you through that, if God can carry you through that, then maybe, just maybe, God can carry me through this." And that humbles me. Because when ESPN comes to me and says, "Ink, you would be in the NFL right now," I just smile. Because if you only knew what God has done, if you only knew my father got saved because of my injury, if you only knew the 3 boys I trained, all first-round NFL draft picks, every single one of them gave their life to Christ. If you only knew my mother, the depth of her faith, the level of impact, the transformation. If you only knew. I've watched God do things through this injury that football could have never done. I've watched God open doors, heal hearts, restore families, save souls. And when I really think about that, I'm like, man, every single day I wake up, I just try to stay out of his way. I don't need to add to it. I don't need to manipulate it. I don't need to control it. I just need to stay available, obedient, faithful. And I'm gonna leave you with this. We already know what to do when God says yes. We already know how to shout, how to celebrate, how to praise. We already know what to do when we get blessed. We already know what to do when our prayers get answered. But here's the question I want to leave you with, and it's rhetorical. What will you do when God says no? Will you still trust Him? Will you still follow Him? Will you still praise Him? Will you still stay true when the dream changes? When the path shifts? When the outcome doesn't look like you imagined? Because sometimes God's no isn't rejection, it's redirection. And sometimes His no is the very thing that leads to a greater yes. And that's where real faith lives. Because when God says no, that's when the spotlight really turns on our faith. That's when belief stops being theory, stops being vocabulary, stops being something we post, quote, or preach. It becomes practice. It becomes the quiet, honest questions we ask when nobody's around. God, will I still trust you when I don't understand? Will I still obey you when it hurts? Will I still worship you when my plan falls apart? Because faith isn't proven when the doors fly open. Faith isn't proven when the crowd is cheering. Faith isn't proven when the contract is signed. Faith is proven when heaven feels silent, when the answer doesn't come, when the dream dies, when the prayer feels unanswered. And that's where God does His deepest work. Because when God said no to football, He was saying yes to souls, yes to salvation, yes to legacy, yes to eternity. And I had to decide, was I going to serve the dream or was I going to serve the God who gave it? Because dreams can change, platforms can shift, plans can fail, but God never does. And every single day I wake up, now I understand something deeper. My obedience isn't optional. My faith isn't private. My response matters. Because people are watching. Not to see if I win. Not to see if I arrive. But to see if I still worship. They are watching how I walk when I limp. How I praise when I'm in pain. How I trust when it costs me something. And for some of them, their belief in God is hanging on how I handle His no. So I choose faith. Not flashy faith. Not loud faith. But faithful faith. The kind that shows up when nobody claps. The kind that keeps praying when nothing changes. The kind that stays surrendered when the outcome still hurts. Because God's no didn't stop my purpose. It revealed it. God's no didn't break me. It positioned me. God's no didn't end the story. It rewrote it. And now I see it. The injury wasn't the tragedy. Disobedience would've been. Losing football wasn't the loss. Losing my faith would've been. Because what good is the NFL if my father never meets Jesus? What good is fame if souls stay lost? What good is success if heaven doesn't rejoice? So now I live with this understanding. Every no from God carries purpose. Every closed door protects something. Every broken plan builds a better one. And when God says no, He's not pushing you away. He's pulling you closer. He's asking, will you trust me when I don't explain? Will you follow me when it costs you everything? Will you still believe when I don't give you what you want? Because real faith isn't born in the yes. It's forged in the no. And if you're standing there right now, confused, hurt, disappointed, if you're holding a shattered dream, a closed door, a prayer that didn't get answered, hear me. God hasn't forgotten you. God hasn't failed you. God hasn't finished with you. This no isn't the end. It's the beginning of a story you couldn't have written on your own. So stay true. Stay obedient. Stay faithful. Because somebody's salvation, somebody's breakthrough, somebody's belief might be waiting on how you respond when God says no. Because when God says no, that's when the noise fades. That's when the crowd gets quiet. That's when it's just you and Him. No cameras. No applause, no confirmation, just obedience. And that's where faith either grows or it gives up. Because belief sounds good when it's convenient. But belief costs something when it's tested. And I had to learn that God wasn't interested in who I was going to be when things worked. He was revealing who I really was when they didn't. Because when the injury happened, the question wasn't, will you still speak about me? Will you still preach about me? The real question was, will you still trust me? Will you still follow me? Will you still believe when the reward looks gone? And I realized something that changed my life. God never promised me the NFL. He promised me His presence. He never guaranteed success. He guaranteed faithfulness. And I had to decide, was I chasing a platform or was I chasing purpose? Because purpose doesn't always look like promotion. Sometimes purpose looks like pain. Sometimes it looks like loss. Sometimes it looks like walking with a limp and still lifting your hands. And that's when it hit me. God wasn't asking me to understand His plan. He was asking me to trust His heart. Because if I could always explain it, it wouldn't require faith. If it always made sense, it wouldn't shape me. If it always felt good, it wouldn't refine me. And now looking back, I see it clearly. The injury didn't disqualify me. It defined me. The setback didn't stop my voice. It gave it weight. The loss didn't silence my testimony. It gave it credibility. Because people don't connect to perfection. They connect to perseverance. They don't need a flawless hero. They need a faithful witness. They need to see someone who kept trusting when the answer was no. Someone who kept walking when the dream collapsed. Someone who kept praising when life didn't clap back. And every single day, that's the assignment. Not to be impressive, but to be obedient. Not to be famous, but to be faithful. Not to prove anything to people, but to honor God with my response. Because somewhere someone is watching. Not to see if God blesses me, but to see if God is still worth following when He doesn't. And if my limp gives them courage. If my obedience gives them hope. If my surrender gives them permission to trust God again, then the no was worth it. Because I'd rather walk in purpose with pain than live in comfort without obedience. I'd rather lose a dream and keep my faith than gain the world and lose my soul. So if you're standing at a crossroads right now, if you're staring at a door God closed, if you're grieving something you prayed for, hear this. God is not punishing you. God is positioning you. He's not delaying your life. He's developing your character. He's not denying you something good. He's protecting you for something greater. And one day you'll look back. And you won't ask, why did God say no? You'll say thank you for loving me enough to say no. Because His no saved you. His no shaped you. His no prepared you. So don't quit. Don't compromise. Don't walk away. Stay true. Stay humble. Stay surrendered. Because when God says no, He's still God. He's still good. He's still faithful. And the story isn't over. It's just entering the chapter where faith becomes real. Where obedience becomes visible. Where your life becomes the sermon someone else has been waiting to hear.